The Chena River, as it flows gently around easy oxbows and meanders through the 70-odd miles of Alaskan wilderness toward Fairbanks, it presents a disarmingly peaceful view of beauty and tranquility. But the Chena has another personality, a wildness akin to Alaska itself, one that dares any man who would attempt to tame it. Ted Lane, a former Fairbanks newscaster, remembers 1967.
There had been a number of floods in Fairbanks prior to 1967. They had really flooded the low-lying areas around the river. So when we heard there was some low-lying flooding, we weren't very concerned. Then around noon on the 14th of August, we heard that the Island Homes area was cut off. The river that used to flow in a U-shape around the homes was flowing across the neck of the U. So I took a camera over there and found the only way to get into Island Homes was by boat. Most of the people whose homes were there down on the east side of town were moving possessions out up to the second story, trying to evacuate the area. By that point, it was pretty difficult because the river had pretty well cut off Island Homes. I came back to the studio and reported that, brought some film back. We began at that point to hear calls for people to fill sandbags to try to protect two of the major facilities along the river. One was the old St. Joseph's Hospital. That's over behind us up to the north part of town, just across the Christian Street Bridge. And the other, a little bit further down the river, was the city power plant, both vital facilities. By the time I got a camera over there, the sandbagging operation was well underway. It worked at the power plant. Water never did flow into the power plant, but at St. Joseph's Hospital, water eventually did breach the sandbagging, but it did give them a bit more time to evacuate the hospital area. Downtown, by the next day, by Tuesday, the water was about 4 feet deep or so in the streets right behind us, down 2nd Avenue, 3rd Avenue. The businesses were closed. When you looked in the windows of the businesses, you could see their merchandise sort of bobbing around in the water. Late on Monday was really the last time that we had any organized way of getting around town. After that point, I had to kind of borrow cars or trucks or mostly boats. Late on Monday, when I came out of this building, after having done the evening news, water was starting to flow through the streets. Most people in town thought it was just a low-level flooding along the river. No one really had any idea what the eventual crest would really be. It reached that crest awfully quickly. The flood stage on the Chena River in Fairbanks is about 12 feet. The river crested at over 19, around 19.7 by around midday on Tuesday. And that meant that something like 90% of the homes and buildings and businesses in Fairbanks had water on their first floors.
Ever since its founding in 1902, Fairbanks, Alaska's second-largest city, has been periodically inundated by devastating floods. The ravaging waters have peaked at about 10-year intervals, often leaving a wake of death and destruction, and the inevitable question of what could be done. The casual observer might well be prompted to ask two questions. What brought Fairbanks into being? And why was it ever located here? Clara Rust, Alaskan pioneer.
Well, I think Fairbanks started on a fluke because this Captain Barnett had chartered this boat from Captain Adams to go up to the Tamnock Crossing. You know, there was quite a native village up on Tamnock Crossing, and he'd heard about it. So he had a boatload of material to go up to trade with the natives to get fur and whatever he could get from them. And Captain Adams, he thought maybe that the River Chena was a slough that would run back into the Tanana. And so they come up as far as they could, and Captain Adams, he said that he wouldn't go any farther with his boat because he didn't want to get his boat stuck up there for the winter. So anyway, that's where they unloaded. That's how come Fairbanks started, because the Captain Adams unloaded Captain Barnett's stuff there on the riverbank, and so that's how Fairbanks got started.
Philip Berrien, Fairbanks city planner.
Virtually every mile that you had to travel from water was, an arduous and painful experience. The key factors in Fairbanks' location then and its survival were, in the beginning, its location on the river, and then some of the things that came about almost as a matter of luck.
And then, of course, after he was the boat was getting ready to leave, why, this prospector, Felix Pedro, why, he come down from the 40-mile country, and he saw the smoke from the boat. And he was getting low on supplies, and he didn't have anything much for his food. So he came down to follow where the boat was. And when he got here, why, the captain asked him about how his prospects were. And he said, well, they're pretty good. And he showed him his poke of gold. And he told him that there was lots where that came from. And so that started the stampede into Fairbanks.
The question then was one of whether Fairbanks was to survive, or the city of Cleary was to survive, or the city of Chena was to survive. Chena was just outside of the city limits of Fairbanks, where the Chena River empties into the Tanana. It had a power station and a railroad and all kinds of things, and at one time was larger in size than Fairbanks. But due to a number of circumstances, including the lack of availability of room to grow and flooding, interestingly enough, and some very poor soils immediately in the vicinity, Chena just went down, and today you're lucky if you can find a foundation or two of that. Cleary was abandoned when the gold ran out because it wasn't on the river.
They thought it'd be just like Dawson, you know. Dawson, when they get all of the peak of the gold taken out, why, the town started to go down and became a ghost town. And people that came down here to Fairbanks, why, they thought it'd be the same thing. They built small cabins, and the streets were narrow, and they just squatted here and there, never thinking it'd be a town. But there's always something seemed to come to resurrect Fairbanks. In 1909, of course, that was when the gold began to peter out, and people were leaving towns, and they thought it was a goner then. That's when the railroad came in. So that was the railroad would be the second one, and then the third would be the gold dredges, and then I think now fourth is the oil, and of course airplanes too. That was a big help. The airplanes started coming in too around in the 20s.
While the flooding is something that Fairbanks has had to live with for years, it really wouldn't have been practical to move it. And in fact, while some communities have moved away from their floodplain and a slow, orderly migration over a period of years, in Fairbanks that wasn't possible, simply because the reason that we're where we are is that we're on the middle of an alluvial deposit that is gravel between the Tanana and the Chena rivers, deposited by those bodies of water. And this alluvial deposit is relatively free of permafrost and ground ice down inside the soil.
In the 1930s, the Alaska District of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was called in to explore flood control possibilities. Jiggs Marks, resident engineer.
First flood project really began in 1939 and 1940 as an attempt to stop the Tanana River floodwaters from coming down into the Chena River through the various interconnecting sloughs from the banks of the Tanana itself. This dike was built out here at Moose Creek, which is now at the south end of the Chena Dam project. That served its purpose very well in protecting the new military base at Ladd Field and that then population of the city of Fairbanks. It wasn't until 1948 that they had another serious flood, and this created the need for additional flood protection, and a diversion system was designed rather close to the city. And in the process of providing the various data necessary to get this project underway, the post-war expansion far exceeded any expectations, and the city grew by leaps and bounds and expanded towards the south and the large air base that was being constructed at Eielson, 26 miles southeast of Fairbanks. So the project lost its ability to actually protect the maximum real estate and the maximum number of people. And so after the 1967 flood, which was a real disaster, the present Chena Lakes flood project was designed and put into motion for construction. After studying the various flood problems of the Fairbanks area, a diversion-type dam was selected as having the least impact on the normal activity and flow of the Chena River.
In 1968, the Corps received authorization from Congress and began its initial flood control studies at its hydraulic laboratories in Bonneville, Oregon. Here, the construction of precise scale models permits engineers to duplicate the flow patterns of water under all possible natural scenarios. They're also able to observe immediate results of every modification made to the terrain through the use of dams, levees, controlled flow gates, and drainage channels. Different alterations in the model can be tested for effectiveness quickly and cheaply before actual construction begins on the river itself. Pete Smith, Laboratory Director.
Working with a structure on the Chena River presents some interesting challenges in the model. We usually work with rivers with fixed banks, but the Chena is an actively meandering stream, slowly but noticeably changing its course all the time. We will have to consider this condition in all of our studies.
Both the velocity and flow patterns of water passing through the model were checked to ensure the integrity of the protective rock design of the approach and discharge channels. Erosion control is the primary reason for the tests, but equally important is the creation of a low-velocity stream in which even a poor swimming species of fish can make its way upstream. Fish ladders are an important consideration in any dam project. They must be designed to allow even the most fragile of species to pass. Jerry Hallberg, Alaska Department of Fish and Game.
The Chena River flows out of the Tanana Hills approximately 120 miles on into Fairbanks, and it supports an extensive sport fishery, mainly for Arctic grayling. Grayling in the area overwinter throughout the Chena and migrate up the Chena in the spring of the year. That's been our main concern with the Chena River Lakes Flood Control Project, is that the dam itself will not impede grayling migrations. There has been a great deal of work done on determining a fish passage structure that will be incorporated in the dam project itself, and we're currently working on it. Some of the work that the State of Alaska Department of Fish and Game has been involved with has been some population estimates in and around the area of the dam site, and also an extensive creel census along the upper Chena River, which is above the impoundment area itself. We're concerned with maintaining a quality sport fishery in that area. Studies currently going on will yield data that management decisions will be based upon.
The Arctic grayling requires a different fish passage condition than the salmon and steelhead trout we usually work with here. They're weaker swimmers and have different migration habit. We propose a fish way to pass the fish during the summer when there isn't a flood, and a fish ladder to pass the fish during the brief flood period of the spring or late summer. Solving problems with flow control structures in scale models where the water reacts the same as it does in nature is a lot faster and cheaper than building the actual structure, testing them, and making alterations in the field. In the model, it takes a few months. In the field, it takes years. The beauty of testing the Moose Creek design in the model is that when contractors are invited to bid to build the outlet works, they'll receive drawings for something that the Alaska District Engineer already knows will be good for flood control and will have a minimum impact on fish and sports fishermen.
When its outlet gates are partially closed, the 7.2-mile-long Moose Creek Dam will contain and guide floodwaters from the Chena through a cleared floodway to the Tanana. From here, the river's combined flow is held in check by a 21-mile, 10-foot-high levee until they are safely past the Fairbanks area. But before construction could begin, the Corps initiated exhaustive studies on a myriad of other facets affecting the project: soil management, vegetation communities, and plans for designating land use were among those examined in detail. One of the most interesting finds came as a result of several surveys conducted to assess possible historic and prehistoric resources. Dr. John Cook, Alaskan archaeologist.
A little while ago, when the Corps of Engineers was planning the Moose Creek Dam project, they approached some professionals in the community here and asked whether or not there might be some impact upon the archaeological resources. So some of us came out here to take a look and found a fairly extensive flaking station or lookout hunting spot on top of Moose Creek Bluffs overlooking the Tanana Valley. When we arrived up here on the bluff, we found a number of flakes scattered around on the surface, such as these, and then upon further testing, found a number of tools, artifacts of various kinds that represent an early Indian or Athabascan culture, probably a couple of thousand years old. This edge was probably used for scraping bone or wood and later on skin in preparing other tools. Mostly these were hunting, gathering people. They would occupy a given valley, and in the summer they'd be down near the mouth of the river or the creek to catch the fish runs, salmon runs primarily. Then in the fall, go up and intercept the large caribou migrations.
Under requirements set forth in Public Law 8972, it was directed that the public be provided with recreation areas wherever possible within the project boundaries. The North Star Borough, including the city of Fairbanks, agreed to share 50% of the construction costs. An examination of the various natural and man-made project sites to determine their potential for recreation use was begun. Two unique features west of Moose Creek Dam were chosen as the most feasible for development. The first was a lake park to be made from the 4 huge excavation pits used to supply gravel for the dam. By contouring the edges and connecting the pits to each other, it would be possible to create a single 250-acre lake with natural-looking shorelines and islands. The second was the Chena River itself. Plans would include facilities for picnics, hiking, and camping. Access to the river would be enhanced by putting in a boat landing. Both would share 2,178 acres and would be connected by an assortment of trails and park roads linking camping sites and parking areas. Then, at open hearings held in Fairbanks, the public was invited to voice their opinions as to what kinds of recreational activities should be approved for inclusion into the master plan.
And I don't want to see these particular lands structured so that a great many uses are precluded that are now precluded in other sorts of lands by some sort of management schemes.
So whether it's cross-country skiing or what, we could have them going right across our front yard.
Fishing, buy for fishing.
Okay.
But we will consider every single item that you have proposed here. We don't propose to eliminate everything below item 5.
Just as long as we don't all have long gray beards before anything gets done. That's
And for our winter activities, again, the community center and the volunteer fire department was far in the lead.
The second choice was an Alaska botanical garden.
Somehow we came to a pretty good consensus of opinion of what we were interested in seeing being allowed.
The project, in all its phases, would cost $180 million and span a period of 11 years. 2,000 workers, employed by 10 different contractors, labored summer and winter to dig, carve, and shape 7.5 million cubic yards of gravel into a 45-mile flood protection barrier. But when the Corps of Engineers had completed the monumental project, the integrity of the land had been carefully maintained. In May of 1984, the public took its first look at the new Chena Lakes recreation area.
Hi there, just for the day? Yeah. $2.
The centerpiece, a sparkling lake, almost pristine in appearance, whose beaches are sloped gradually into the water to provide a quarter of a mile of safe swimming areas marked by floats. Two group shelters feature raised barbecue pits surrounded by picnic tables, while a separate structure contains restrooms and changing areas. And along this peninsula, a winding road invites access to individual picnic areas, each with its own table, fire pit, and lakefront view. Near a wooden dock on the opposite shore, boaters may drive to water's edge to launch their craft from a concrete plank boat ramp. Or boats may be rented at the concession stand, which also offers fishing poles, bait and snacks, and even serves as a kind of social center. The Lakeside Park area accommodates 180 day-use vehicles, plus an additional 40 cars with trailers. Overnight campers can enjoy both seclusion and spaciousness among the two loops of 35 campsites scattered through the river park, whose amenities include paved areas for wheelchairs. With 45 additional sites situated at the lake park, the recreation complex offers a relaxed overnight camping experience for 80 families at one time. And for those adventurers who seek whatever lies beyond the bend, the River Park boat ramp opens a gateway for exploring upstream or downstream on miles of scenic wilderness riverway.
Fairly close to town, and the facility is real nice. Camping, plenty of parking, nice clean beach area, plenty of room for kids, and no hazards as far as I can see. So we're real impressed.
A lot of tourists commenting that the best facility they've seen.
It's just really nice to have a place where we can come and camp. It's only like an hour, half an hour away from home.
I came out here, I hadn't been out here before, and just come out here and see it and see what they've done out here and carved this out of the scraggly spruce and things. Really good. Fairbanks has needed something like this for years.
There are also those who simply yearn for a quiet place in which to lean back and feel good. That, too, is in the nature of this place. And then, in good season, the gentle sounds of summer give way to the crackling air of winter. A new kind of beauty settles over the face of the land, and a fresh opportunity for the people of Fairbanks to enlarge their horizons. There's still good fishing, of course, once you've drilled your way to water. For their own survival and advancement, humans must often battle to control the forces of nature. But in this case, here at Chena River Lakes, friendly persuasion did the job. The Corps of Engineers has persuaded nature to join in the good life. The Chena Flood Control Project has become, among many good things, a monument to man's ingenuity and to his common sense. Without changing the fundamental character of the land, the rugged profile that Alaskans love, the Corps of Engineers has reshaped a barren and sometimes threatening expanse of terrain into a truly inviting playground. The Corps has demonstrated again, as it has before, that man's impact on the landscape need not leave a scar. That attractive landscapes and attractive lifestyles go together by nature.